What if the sweetest gift from your own child was meant to kill you? I never imagined that question would belong to me, Dorothy Miller, a 69-year-old widow who still believed that families protect each other, that grandchildren are blessings, and that a birthday gift from your only son is something you cherish, not fear. When the delivery boy handed me that elegant box of chocolates wrapped in gold foil, my first instinct was joy, because my son, Jacob, rarely remembered dates, let alone bothered to send a gift. Lately, he barely visited except when he needed money to fix his business or complained about how expensive life had become. And I thought maybe this birthday gift meant he was finally thinking of me not as a burden, not as a bank account, but as his mother. I held that box like it was a piece of love I had been waiting to receive for years. I smiled so big that even the living room felt brighter, as if the sunlight changed color just to match my mood. I imagined tasting the chocolate dark, rich, melting slowly on my tongue like warm memories of childhood when Jacob used to bring me tiny candies from school fairs. And we ate them together while he told me stories about imaginary monsters, superheroes, dreams. I thought these chocolates were a reminder of those days. I never knew that those chocolates were going to rewrite my life, turn love into poison, and push me toward a kind of strength I never knew existed. I placed the box neatly on the dining table, planning to taste it after lunch, but before I could open it, I heard a small rush of footsteps and squeals of laughter my daughter-in-law, Megan, and my grandchildren, 5-year-old Ellie and 9-year-old Lucas, suddenly appearing at the door with a surprise visit. They had made me a small birthday card with glitter sticking to the edges and a drawing of me smiling with a crown on my head saying, "Grandma Queen." The card nearly made me cry. Megan hugged me unusually warm, telling me she remembered the date because I had once complained that I was getting old and being forgotten. She said she didn't want me to ever feel that way. It was the first hug from her that felt real. Wanting to share the moment, wanting to honor the sudden warmth, I told them my son had sent chocolates. The children's eyes widened, excitement bursting like fireworks. I could have said no. I could have told them to wait. I could have tasted one first. But something in my heart felt generous, hopeful, foolishly trusting. I wanted to be kind. I wanted the day to feel full. I opened the box, removed the wrapping gently, and handed a piece to each of them, while Megan chose one for herself. I didn't eat any not because I suspected anything, but because I wanted to watch their smiles first. I always loved watching children enjoy something sweet. It reminded me that innocence still existed in the world. But the sweetness turned bitter fast. Within minutes, Lucas dropped his chocolate. Confusion twisted on his face as he clutched his stomach. Ellie began crying with sudden pain, her breathing rapid and sharp. Megan, who had taken only half a bite, staggered toward the sink to spit hers out, dizzy and pale. I thought maybe food poisoning, maybe they were allergic. I was panicked but rational. Dialing 911, my voice cracking yet steady as I told them children were in pain. Something was wrong, very wrong. When the ambulance arrived, lights flashing red like a warning from heaven, I rode with them, holding Ellie as she screamed, whispering, "Grandma's here, Grandma's here." It's okay, though nothing was okay. At the hospital, doctors rushed them away, asking what they ate, what was in the chocolate, did I have the box? Those questions hit me like strikes of thunder, slow and ungraspable at first. The doctor's voice tightened, cold and alert. "Bring us that box immediately." My heart trembled, not with suspicion, but with fear that I had accidentally bought something contaminated. I called Jacob. I expected him to rush to the hospital with concern, maybe panic, maybe regret for sending cheap candy something. Instead, he answered casually, irritated, asking if I had opened his gift yet. I told him the children were sick from it. There was a pause. A long, dry, airless pause. Not shock, not horror, just silence. Then he said coldly, "Did you eat any?" Not, "Are they okay?" Not, "I'm coming." Not even, "Oh my God." Just checking if I had eaten one. I thought it was worry, but something in his tone sliced through me like a thin, invisible knife. Something emotionless. Something that didn't belong to love. I hung up, trembling inside without knowing why. Megan's parents arrived, furious and accusing, thinking I had given them old, rotten chocolates. The police came for the box. I drove home with a shaking body, clutching the wheel, trying to breathe through the memory of Jacob's voice. I entered the house, looked at the open box still sitting on the dining table. One chocolate missing, wrappers torn, the rich smell now nauseating, sinister. I picked it up to hand to the police officer waiting outside my door. He asked me if I had eaten any. I said no. He sighed in relief, real relief. I didn't understand why until they tested it. When they returned, they didn't bring comfort. They brought the truth. Arsenic. The chocolates were soaked with arsenic. Not a little, not trace amounts. Enough to kill an adult quickly. Enough to kill me. Enough for me to stop breathing before anyone could reach a hospital. Enough to silence a 69-year-old widow forever. The children ate small amounts, they might survive. But the poison wasn't meant for them. It was meant for me. My son had sent me poison. My son had remembered my birthday so perfectly, only to try to erase me from existence. The air in my lungs turned heavy, acidic. My throat clenched. My mind collapsed into 1,000 questions, none of them having answers gentle enough to hold without breaking. Why would he do this? Why would he risk his own children? Why would he look me in the eyes last week and hug me? Why did he ask if I ate any? That's when the police asked, "Do you have a will or inheritance?" The world shifted. I didn't feel like a mother anymore. I didn't feel like anything. I felt like prey. I felt like prey, and my son was the hunter. Thought poison would finish me. He had forgotten who raised him. If he thought poison would finish me, he had forgotten who raised him. Those words kept echoing inside my mind like a heartbeat turned into a storm while I sat alone in the hospital waiting room. The scent of antiseptic mixing with the metallic taste of betrayal still stuck in my throat. Hours earlier, I had believed my son's gift was love, and now I was sitting under fluorescent lights trying to understand how love could become arsenic. Doctors moved around me, voices muffled behind glass doors, machines beeping like alarms warning me that my life wasn't the same anymore. I watched Megan pacing in the hallway outside the pediatric ICU, her face pale, swollen from crying, clutching a tiny pink shoe Ellie had lost while they were treating her. She hadn't spoken to me since we arrived, not even a glance, and the distance between us felt colder than the poison itself. I couldn't blame her. She thought I nearly killed her children. How could she understand that I almost killed myself too without knowing? The police officer who had taken the chocolate box returned and stood before me, his expression heavy. "Mrs. Miller, we have more questions. We need your cooperation." Cooperation. That word felt insulting, as if I was part of this, as if I was responsible for handing death disguised as candy to my own grandchildren. He asked whether I had enemies, whether anyone had access to my home, whether I had recently changed financial arrangements or told someone about money. I answered numbly, my voice sounding like it came from a stranger living inside my body. Then he asked, "Do you trust your son?" That question stabbed deeper than the truth itself. Trust? Did I trust the boy I held against my chest the day he was born? The one who used to draw me cards that said, "Mommy is my best friend." The teenager who cried on my shoulder when his father died. The man who promised to take care of me when I grew old. I wanted to scream, yes. I wanted to protect him, even while I sat shaking from the attempt on my life. I told the officer I didn't know, and that was the most painful answer I had ever said out loud. He leaned forward, voice low. The chocolates were bought with a bank card registered to your son's business account. Do you need a lawyer? The word lawyer echoed in my head like a verdict. Inheritance, money. My husband had left me everything, trusting me to do what was right for our family. Jacob had assumed the money would eventually be his. Like time owed him. Like love owed him. I thought of the last time we argued over finances. He wanted me to sign a paper giving him access to my accounts, saying it would make things simpler. I refused, telling him I wasn't dead yet. Maybe that was the moment he decided I needed to be. The children survived the night. Small doses saved them. Doctors warned of observation, complications, trauma. Megan didn't look at me until morning, and when she did, her eyes were filled with a force I never expected, fear mixed with rage, guilt tangled with grief, a mother desperate to protect her babies. What did you give them? She asked quietly, like each word weighed her down. I whispered the truth. It came from Jacob. She stared at me as if reality had cracked open and she was falling through it. She shook her head, whispering no over and over, as if denial could change the test results. Finally, she asked what I hadn't dared ask myself. Why would he send that to you? I swallowed hard. We need to find out. But I already knew the answer. Money. My husband's money. The house Jacob wanted me to sell. The accounts he couldn't access. The freedom I had earned over a lifetime. He wanted it now. Without waiting. Without patience. Without me. Megan broke into tears and hugged her children's blankets against her chest as if warding off death itself. Hours later, Jacob finally arrived, walking into the hospital with an expression rehearsed in a mirror. Panic, concern, innocence too perfect to be real. He ran toward Megan first, acting like he had just discovered a tragedy he wasn't responsible for, as if he hadn't caused it. He hugged her tightly, demanding to know what happened, theatrically outraged that something so horrible could occur to his family. I watched him pretend, and that was the moment I realized monsters don't hide under beds, and they don't always come wearing masks. Some of them come in the shape of your children, wearing your last name, crying tears they don't mean, hugging people they don't love. After he comforted his wife, he turned to me. Mom, are you okay? His voice broke in just the right place, soft in all the right ways. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried I wasn't dead. The police approached him with questions. His face shifted slightly, barely noticeable, like a crack in porcelain. He denied everything, claimed he had no idea how poison got there, cried that someone was framing him, insisted this was insanity. He asked if maybe I bought something contaminated and blamed him out of stress. And then he looked at me, really looked at me with a silent message. Don't say anything. A threat hidden behind a smile. He knew I loved him. He counted on that love to keep him safe. But something was shifting inside me, something that felt like steel being forged in fire. I told the police I wanted a lawyer present before speaking further. Jacob's eyes widened, a flicker of panic. I had never said anything like that before. Never put a barrier between us. Never protected myself from him. He realized something. I had finally stopped being his mother blindly. I was now a witness. Megan stared at us both like the walls were collapsing, like she didn't know whether to hold on to her husband or protect her children from him. Hours passed. I left the hospital only after the doctors guaranteed the children were stable. Jacob stayed with Megan, trying to glue together the version of himself he wanted her to believe. I drove home, but home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like the scene of a crime I hadn't committed but almost died from. I sat on the couch, looking at framed photos of Jacob at different ages, smiling in his school uniform, playing baseball, graduating, holding his own newborn son. How was that little boy the same man who tried to poison me? What part of him had I failed to raise? Or was he born with something missing, something dark, something broken? Was love not enough? Or did I love him so much that I let him think he deserved everything without earning it? These questions bled into my mind until a knock shattered the silence. It was my husband's lawyer, Mr. Lawson, an old friend of the family. The police had contacted him, and he needed to ask me questions, clarify my financial situation, examine my will. He looked at me long and hard. "Dorothy, you need to understand something. If your son is found guilty, he will be arrested, and he will face charges serious enough to put him behind bars for decades." I stared at him without blinking. He almost killed children. My voice was steady now. Not sad, not confused. Just real. He nodded slowly. "Yes, and if you protect him, you become part of the crime in the eyes of the law." My heart clenched, but not from sorrow, anymore from clarity. I had one choice. Let him destroy me and my grandchildren, or let him stand alone in the consequences he created. Mr. Lawson handed me papers. Legal protections, financial locks, emergency transfers. He told me to sign them to secure my assets from anyone trying to access them. My hands didn't shake as I signed. I was no longer driven by emotions. I was driven by survival. When I finished, he looked at me carefully and said, "You're stronger than I thought." I didn't feel strong. I felt scorched, like a field burned down to ash, but ready for something new to grow. Days passed. Investigations continued. Megan asked to meet me privately. She came without Jacob. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Did he really mean to kill you?" I nodded. She closed her eyes, tears falling. Then she looked up with a decision already made. "If he could do this to you, he could do anything to us. I'm going to help you." I watched her transform from a scared wife into a mother lion. Together we planned. We gathered evidence, messages, phone calls, financial records. She revealed things I didn't know: secret debts, threats he made, lies he told her. We weren't doing this for revenge. We were doing it to protect the future. On the 7th day, police asked me to come in to make a statement. I agreed. Jacob assumed I'd save him. He assumed I'd break down, defend him, claim it was a misunderstanding. He underestimated me one last time. I walked into that station, sat down, and told the truth. Every word, clear, plain, final. My son tried to kill me for my inheritance. And as I ended my statement, a scream echoed from the hallway. A scream from the hallway, shouting, something we didn't see coming, something that changed everything. Because Jake wasn't alone, someone else had helped him. If poison couldn't silence me and betrayal couldn't break me, then truth was the weapon I would use next. I thought Jacob had acted alone, driven by greed and impatience. But the scream from the hallway that day revealed something darker than a desperate son seeking money. Megan burst into the police lobby, her hands shaking, phone clutched tight, tears streaming as she pointed to the screen, her voice cracking out the name of someone who should never have been part of this story: Jacob's father's accountant, Mr. Harris, the same man who had handled our finances for decades. The same man who had called me after my husband died to help me understand our accounts. The same man who always insisted that widows should rely on trustworthy men. The police rushed to pull Megan aside, and she handed them her phone, showing messages between Jacob and Harris. Not just recent ones, but conversations dating back months, messages full of instructions. "Should never suspect you, and we have no choice if we want control." And the one that made me feel like the air had turned to ice: "Once she's gone, sign over the business profits immediately." I stared at those messages like they were venom dripping across a screen. It wasn't just my son. He had a mentor, a guide, A man who convinced him that killing me was not only an option but a strategy. Jacob hadn't just betrayed me. He had been manipulated into believing murder was a financial decision. The police opened a parallel investigation immediately, and suddenly Jacob wasn't just a greedy son. He was part of a conspiracy. Harris had been stealing money from the business for years, using Jacob as a shield, a puppet, a fall guy if things ever went wrong. My husband had once trusted Harris, had believed the man was honest, loyal, hardworking. Now I understood that Harris had been waiting for the moment when the wife of his client would become vulnerable, alone, desperate for guidance. Instead, he found a woman who wasn't as naive as he expected, but still a son who could be influenced, who could be bent. Jacob wasn't a boy anymore, yet the truth was painful. He let himself be owned. Still, manipulation didn't excuse murder. Megan stood there shaking, torn between relief and horror, realizing she had been living next to a stranger influenced by another stranger. The police made their move quickly, first arresting Harris at his office while he pretended to review receipts, his face turning chalk white as they placed him in handcuffs. When Jacob saw Harris was arrested, his mask shattered. He began shouting that it wasn't his idea, that he only wanted things to be easier, that Harris convinced him it was necessary. He screamed that Harris used him, abused his trust, told him I would waste the money. But even as he tried to shift blame, he never expressed regret for what happened to his children, for nearly killing them. That was the moment I knew Jacob wasn't just misled, he had darkness inside him too. Harris may have fed it, but Jacob let it grow. The police separated them, and the prosecutor built a case so airtight, even Jacob's sobs couldn't squeeze through. Harris was charged with conspiracy, attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement. Jacob was charged with attempted murder, not just of me, but of his own children. That revelation broke the last thread of sympathy anyone had left. Megan refused to visit him. She filed for full custody and a restraining order. She told me, voice trembling but firm, I can't let my children grow up thinking this is love. I realized that her courage was blooming out of tragedy, like flowers forced through cracks in concrete. The trial was brutal yet necessary. I sat there in the courtroom, feeling my bones ache not from age, but from the weight of watching my son sit in a defendant's chair. People whispered around me, some pitying, some judging, but all of them unaware that I wasn't there as a mother mourning her child. I was there as a woman demanding justice. I took the stand, sworn to tell the truth, my voice steady as I recounted the birthday gift, the hospital screams, the silence on the phone, the question he asked first, did you eat any? That sentence alone convinced the jury of his intent. Harris glared at me as if I had destroyed his life, but he never looked at the children who almost died. He never looked at the mother who trusted him for decades. He never looked at Megan, who held Lucas's hand when he had nightmares after the hospital, or Ellie, who had now refused chocolate forever. The verdict came after only 3 hours of deliberation. Harris was sentenced to 30 years. Jacob was sentenced to 25. When the judge read the words, attempted murder of a parent and endangerment to minors, Jacob sobbed. Not because of remorse, but because he finally realized the cost of his greed. When they took him away, he looked at me one last time, expression twisting, searching for forgiveness. He didn't find it. I didn't nod. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I simply looked at him with a truth no poison could erase. He was not my loss. He was his own. After the trial, life became strangely quiet. People avoided me out of discomfort, pity, curiosity. They didn't know whether to hug me or hide their children from me. But Megan stayed by my side. She brought Ellie and Lucas often, not out of obligation, but out of love. We became partners in healing. I helped with the children, cooked when she was exhausted, and she helped me navigate lawyers, finances, court documents. We held each other together, not because we needed someone, but because we chose to care when our shared world collapsed. In the months that followed, I realized something. There are countless elders who experience abuse, manipulation, financial exploitation, and even attempts at harm, not by strangers, but by their families. I met them during my legal consultations, in hospital support groups, and charities I visited to understand my rights. Stories like mine weren't rare, they were buried. And I wasn't going to let them stay there. With Mr. Lawson and Megan's help, I created a foundation dedicated to protecting elders and widows from financial abuse, loneliness, exploitation, and family violence. We funded legal support, counseling, education programs, and safe houses for seniors whose loved ones turned against them. The organization was called Dorothy's Voice, not because I survived, but because I chose to speak. The media covered this story, but that wasn't the victory. The victory was the day an 80-year-old woman hugged me outside a courthouse and said, "I thought I was alone until I heard your story." The victory was watching Megan speak to other young wives, teaching them to recognize warning signs, teaching them that silence is not loyalty. The victory was Lucas telling me, "Grandma, you're a superhero," not because I saved him from poison, but because I saved myself from despair. Years passed. I grew older, but not weaker. People sometimes asked if I forgave Jacob. The truth is complicated. I don't hate him. I don't wish him pain. But forgiveness is not a gift owed to someone who tried to erase me. Forgiveness is something earned, and he never earned it. What I have instead is peace. I visit him only once, not to reconcile, not to cry, but to tell him one thing. You taught me that love without respect is not love. And I choose respect. I leave without looking back. And now, as I sit with my granddaughter braiding my gray hair, I smile knowing that betrayal didn't end my story. It shaped it. Poison could have killed me, but purpose saved me. My son tried to take my life for money, but instead, he gave my life meaning. I am not just a victim. I am a survivor, a protector, a voice for those who are silenced. And this is why I share my stories, so no one else eats bitterness disguised as love. So no one else trusts poison wrapped as a gift. And if you are listening now, if you are here with me, then you already know that every secret has a truth waiting to be revealed. Every wound has a lesson waiting to grow. And every voice, even an old woman's voice, can change the world. If you want more true emotional stories like mine, stories of love, betrayal, strength, and truth spoken through the eyes of a grandmother, then don't forget to follow and subscribe to Grandma's Secret Tales. There are more secrets to tell, and you won't want to miss the next one, and you won't want to miss the next one.